Well, nice to see everyone. And as you know, the goal here of us getting together is twofold. Actually, it could be infinite folds, but two folds that I can name. One is just to be together, which is extremely important. And two is to answer questions or talk about any subject. While I'm answering questions, most important is to just be. And while you are waiting, which is not really waiting, just being, just we do something simple like feel your hand or feel your butt on the chair or something like that. So that way, the answers and the information will get to you much quicker in a much different level. And of course, it's not information, so the only way I can present some of these things is to say something and then and I correct it, because yes, we're giving information, but it's not quite a normal information that we are used to, that the mind can value. So it's much better to just sit back and kind of hear it, but hear it through the body as well, and then it will make more sense. Or I could say more nonsense.
I was waiting for
that. So we're making nonsense. So welcome to nonsense territory. Anyone has any questions? Maria has a question.
Okay, let's see if I can make it kind of clear. It seems as if I'm getting a little bit better at remaining within. A lot of the time it seems easier when I actually feel all the sensations in the area, but occasionally my body is very quiet. There doesn't appear to have any, let's say, uncomfortable sensations, and so it appears as if it's just in a, it's within, but it's in a kind of unlimited space. When I mean unlimited, I don't mean I'm outside my body or anything, but it doesn't feel boundary. It doesn't have boundaries. And so it feels like the attention goes into a full scanning situation, a full body attention.
Attention, okay, continue, yeah.
Yes, as if it's in a full body. It's not necessarily limited to a particular area of the body, except when it's some sensations occur somewhere and the attention goes there. But it kind of stays within this area that seems to be without borders. It's as if it is as if your body is transparent somehow. You can't really feel the borders. So that's an observation. So out of that, I wanted to ask two things. One is occasionally I get the feeling that I can stay in that realm, but also be aware of some thinking, as if the two can coexist. Other times I feel no, they can't, and I'm somewhere there in my thinking. So I want you to elaborate on that, in the coexistence of both. And secondly, what could you elaborate a little bit on the fact that when you are present, or when you are, within, you say there's an opening. So opening to what? I want you to just give us a little bit more of this opening. I kind of have an understanding, but is that clear?
Yeah, I think I think I have a good idea what you're asking. We'll see that when I'm answering if it's not what you were asking. But yeah, the opening, it sounds like a bunch of wonderful things are happening with you based on what you're saying. And when we enter this other reality, other dimension, it's not even a dimension. When we activate the body and we are aware of space and aware of context, we're kind of running around attempting to speak about it, because even though we have absolutely no words to describe it. And as you know, as soon as we describe something, we try to chuckle it out, because we want to understand it and not at the same time, because we don't want to get stuck on understanding. So when we refer to opening, it's like it feels like an opening as soon as I'm angling into the body, or I should say towards the body, right? I can describe it metaphorically, like I'm opening the door and God comes in, and my job is only to angle towards my body. Or I can say that I can also say that I'm knocking on the door and God opens the door. They are all metaphors. Either way it works. So there is an opening. It's rather a metaphorical that there is an opening. The opening is actually some kind of we become aware of. As soon as I angle in, I become aware of this amazing, wonderful, steady peace. It feels like opening. But no matter how we describe it, it's going to be inaccurate, right? Because words are defining our sensory world. You know, our words and the senses and the templates are all connected. And as soon as I angle towards my body, we're entering the world of nonsense. And the contrast mind, our normal mind, calls it nonsense because it cannot understand it. And therefore, it labels it very hard. This is a hard thing to do because it cannot connect to it, it cannot understand it, and most importantly, it cannot control it. So it's hard. So we call it, as soon as I angle in, there's an opening, we call it the opening, and it's actually very easy. If we can bypass the contrast mind, it's easy. Just because the mind cannot value it, it doesn't mean it's not valuable. Just because there is no word for it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Just because the contrast mind can't control it, so it calls it nonsense. But that's exactly where we want to be, in the world of nonsense. So that's about the opening. And you also mentioned, I think, you get into this space, right, Maria? You get into space, and you mentioned the word attention, like you're almost like you're paying attention in a different way. Did you say it that way? That you're paying attention in a different way?
I feel as if the attention is from within out.
Okay, good.
Feels
good.
like that.
Okay.
But a few times I'm also able to be in that attention and aware of outside or thinking. It's not always like that, but sometimes they seem to coexist.
Yeah.
And other times it jumps to the what I call outside. You know.
Yeah, I understand. Well, the
other thing too is that once or twice it's being very quiet, and I felt as if I could actually relax back into that attention.
Okay.
It doesn't happen very often. Is a relaxing into it. It doesn't necessarily feel like a really peaceful place or any. I don't want to make my what I'm saying to imagine. Nor do I want to get myself into an ego trip. But it does feel sometimes that I can actually relax into it.
Yes.
When I'm not taken over.
Yes. Okay. Well, as soon as we enter to the peaceful place, the rules totally change. The rules that we generally know of in this contrast reality, which I usually show this way, it's got a past and the future, so I usually show it like a horizontal line. And as soon as we enter, it's in an angle to it. I think I'm showing it right. Yeah, in an angle to it. And the rules that are normally applicable are absolutely not applicable. So sometimes the reason you have such a hard time describing it is because as soon as you enter, even the attention ability shifts. So normally my attention is being guided by my senses, and things make sense, and things exist one thing exists in comparison to another thing. That's why we call it contrast reality. We can call it anything we want. I call it contrast reality, or we could even call it conflict reality, because conflict is absolutely inevitable with other people, within ourselves. It's like a monkey talking in my head and creating conflict, whether they exist or not. So as soon as we enter this angular dimension, everything shifts, and I'm now not only able to pay attention with my senses, but I'm able to pay attention differently. You might see me sometimes, I move my eyes, or I'm moving my fingers, or I'm doing weird things with my mouth, like this. And later on, when we get into it deeper, you will see that the paying attention now will be regulated by entirely different organs and combination of organs. So I have this wonderful moving magic wand that's that's based on a golden ratio, and that's already paying attention differently. Moving it, I'm paying attention differently to this inner world. Smiling, the geometry of smile, I can move my attention, I can create intention, attention at the same time, and I can move it within the body. It's a matter of practicing it. So the point is that the normal attention that we experience normally is still there, but as soon as you enter this peaceful place, the attention becomes different. It's almost like we are, it's not almost like, it's almost exactly like as if we were returning home and we got this present. You're a princess, and you got for your birthday, you got this present, this spaceship. So here you got the princess, here is your first present, the spaceship. You sit in it, and there's all these buttons to push. Wow, look at that. Oh my God, what happens? So we're pushing all these buttons inside, you know. We can experiment. And all of a sudden we realize that these two worlds totally coexist. And sometimes this dominates and sometimes this dominates, but in an ideal situation, they are in total harmony. My sensory world exists and works, but it's calm, and the ratio reality, which is in an angle to this one, also is totally activated. And they totally coexist in harmony. And we're just not used to it because we're only used to working and paying attention to this reality, the horizontal one. And since this is an accompanying reality, okay, at the beginning, it seemed like the two realities are fighting each other, like stepchildren or something. Oh, it's my mother. No, it's your father, whatever, right? So it kind of appears that they fight each other, depending on what modality we happen to be in that moment. If my senses dominate, I'm more aware of this. If I'm sinking in more, I'm more aware of the peace. And eventually, what happens is, for everyone, is that you sink into this space, and that's home. That's the home base. And from that home base, we can operate our contrast reality. We can still build a bridge, we can still build a house, we can still drive a car deliberately. So what happens is, from this different perspective, we're going to be a lot more efficient. And more importantly, by deliberately working on this level, there is no noise in the head. The most efficient way to think is to learn how not to think. And this amazing peace brings with it this automatically that I don't have to think. But when I do think, it's a lot more powerful. So at that time, what happens is that the two realities are absolutely not in conflict, because this contrast reality, this one, totally gets subordinated to this reality. Now, because it gets subordinated to this reality, it does not mean that this reality is somehow inferior and this is superior, right? So it's all linked together. The only reason we're talking about it separately is because there is no other way to talk about it. When we introduce it, we talk about it as if the two were separate, but they are not. So there will be total harmony, extremely accurate thinking, decision-making, calm, amazing calm, like the monkey is not talking in my head, telling me stuff. Take a look at this, take a look at that. What's she saying? What's she doing? Oh my God, you gotta do this. You're irresponsible, whatever. Shut up. Angle in is peace. And the two will work. So you're experiencing some of these symptoms in your in your practice, because the two is sometimes this and sometimes that dominates, and you're also experiencing that the paying of the attention can happen in a linear fashion or in a non-linear fashion. You're experiencing both. Sometimes you're paying attention and you feel space differently, right? So I think that's about the comments I can make from what you said. And did I understand your question correctly? Now we'll know.
Yes, you did. It feels to me too that these two, in a logical way, are there all the time. They are there all the time. So they do coexist, but it just looks as if somehow, whatever it is, this attention can just be totally overtaken by, a bit like in a dream state, or you just can be completely into a dream state, whereas very occasionally one can be aware that one is here and there is also thinking.
Yeah. Look, you're doing the best you can to describe it.
Yes.
And congratulations, because it's extremely hard to describe.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So enjoy the ride. One thing you might remind yourself of is that as soon as you angle in and you enter this piece, you don't need to make decisions. It's like God is taking me for a ride. Like I gave over control to this amazing, smart intelligence. So it feels like, at the beginning, it feels like something is dragging me around, making me experience things. It's like I'm holding God's hand. He or she is dragging me around, and I'm letting it. So the point is, expect to be dragged around with no expectation. And enjoy the ride, because it's going to be a little bit different every moment. And if you have a tendency to explain it to yourself, then just smile at it. Oh, you know, this is that and that is this, just chuckle. And just be okay with the fact that you're holding God's hand and he or she is dragging you around to introduce you to your queendom. How's that? That's as close as we can sort of come to this. But congratulations, because your question already implies that you're at a certain place. You progressed quite a lot. Okay, thank you. Okay, any, while we are being very peaceful together, oops. Anyone has any questions, especially with respect to practice? That will be really welcomed. If not, what we do is...
No, I think, no?
No, I don't see any hands. It's okay. What happens is that, you know, our, the inbox or the shoebox have very good questions usually.
Mm-hmm.
We have like 100 and more questions arrive, and then we pick out the most interesting ones to answer. So then we might as well go into the shoebox and answer those questions. But let me remind everyone that the most important thing about the answering the question is not the answer, is how we are being while we are listening or talking. So you're listening and my talking and being is really the most important thing in having an answer to a question. Okay, shoebox.
Okay, shoebox it is. All right. I have been watching the videos on your YouTube channel and doing the practice that you talk about and guide us through on the functional silence video. I find it very helpful, but I have had anger issues for a long time, and sometimes I still get waves of such intense anger that I find it hard to go inside. Can you help me?
Don't be angry.
Give yourself a shake. You're funny.
He has waves. Is it a he or a she? Do we know? Must be a man. He's angry.
Excuse me. Do you want to see anger?
Okay. It's automatically pops up. Angry. Must be a man. It's helpful to have anger issues. Okay, sometimes with waves.
When the anger comes up, at that time it's hard for him or her to go inside.
Okay. Well, it's to be accurately answering this question, I would have to get the person and talk to them personally as to how specifically it works, because it makes a difference when the anger comes up. If the anger comes up while you're angling inside, or you're angry to start with, or anger pops up as a result of having some sort of an inner sensation, you know, it would be a major difference.
Mm-hmm.
But no emotion, including anger, can conquer this amazing peace that we are all inheriting, anger or no anger. You can be angry and let the anger be there whenever it comes. Don't try to stop it, analyze it. It doesn't matter where it comes from. My father's father fell off the horse, and then historically I inherited this, and then when my wife left me, she triggered the anger. Now I understand. So if that comes up, just chuckle. All of us humans have issues. The human mind is totally insane, and is full of emotions and anger and biases and stuff like that. So let the anger just be anger. Let it be there. Don't try to stop it, analyze it, or anything like this. Matter of fact, it's probably not a good idea to stop anger and be angry as long as the anger is there. And while the anger is there, you can attempt very gently to take your attention off the anger and angle towards the body. What you're saying is, I'm allowing this anger is just fine, but I'm still angling in towards the body. And what you might find is that the anger, as well as activation of who you are, can totally coexist. And usually what happens, as long as you're angling in, that the anger is there, but the intensity of anger diminishes very quickly. Now, that's not why we do the exercise of going in. It's just a byproduct. Sometimes emotion, some kind of a fear or anger or anything, can actually be helpful in assisting you in going in angling in. There is a saying, I think it's in the Bible or something, that the heaven is in the gates of hell or something like that. So sometimes very serious emotion, very serious pain, actually the intersection of this pain or anger or fear, and when this anger touches this angling in you, the angular you, that's the gate to heaven. So any kind of anger, fear, or any kind of issue or anything that pops up, we don't have to stop it before we can go to the next step, because those act as catalysts towards our awakening. And the normal human tendency is to, first I have to take care of my anger issues, let's say. First I gotta take care of my fear. First I have to be in a better financial position, whatever, right? And if I can use metaphorically, the universe is giving us these kind of troubles. It's not because the universe or God is pissed off. They are to be used as catalysts. They are the most efficient way to actually enter or focus towards the body. So it's actually the anger that pops up most likely is a great helper for you. Anger is present, your angle in. On the edge of anger is the gate to heaven. So don't try to stop it, angle in, smile. It's a general statement I just made because I don't know exactly when your anger pops up. So I would have to have like a private session or a private conversation with you. So that's for the anger. Viva la anger, however it's called in French.